Hi. My name is Howard, and I am an alcoholic. Hi. I want to thank Bill and the other members of the program committee for inviting me to participate in this meeting. This is a great honor, and I really appreciate it. I heard a guy in Simi Valley several months ago. The gentleman was 93 years old, and he was taking his third birthday cake. And while he was talking, his left hand was trembling. And he said, my left hand isn't trembling because I'm nervous. He said, I had a minor stroke several years ago, and my left hand is trembling because of the nerve damage. Now my right hand is trembling because I'm nervous. But I don't know how many people here are here tonight, probably 1,200, and I want you to know 1,200 people don't make me nervous. But 1,200 people have 2,400 eyes, and that makes me nervous. Anyway, I'm glad to be here. I am an alcoholic. I know that. That's the most important thing that I know about myself and my life, is that I'm an alcoholic. I believe I always drank alcoholically. I don't ever remember sitting down and having a drink and a half with someone just to be sociable, just to pass the time of day. I didn't drink for that. You know, I drank because it made me feel good. It made me be somebody special, a jerk. Everybody always told me that I was a jerk, you know, and it was better than being passed over. I appreciated the recognition. I was the youngest of 6 kids that were born within 8 years, and there wasn't a great deal of love in the family. You know, you got 6 kids in 8 years. There's something going on, but I'm not sure it was love. If it was, I never experienced any of it. There was a lot of conflict at home. My dad was an alcoholic, and he would have called himself a disciplinarian, but what he really was a punisher. And if you did something that he didn't want you to do or had told you not to do, he'd beat you. And part of the process there was that you couldn't cry when that was going on, and if you did, you got whipped till you stopped. Now, I never got where I liked that. Some people have, but I never did. I don't think that made me an alcoholic, but it didn't give me a lot of self-assurance, and I know that it created conflict. I always had to go to Sunday school. My brothers and sisters and I always went to some Sunday school, and I'm not sure what we were taught. If they taught me about a loving God, I would not have understood what they were talking about, because I had not experienced any loving, being loving or being loved. And so if they taught about a loving God, I missed it. But when they talked about a punishing God, I got it immediately. I knew precisely what that was all about. And that never gave me a lot of spiritual strength either. I somehow came out of this childhood believing that God was up in heaven behind the pearly gates on the streets of gold, that there was a separation between me and God, that there were some tattletale angels around somehow keeping tabs on me, and that in the long run I was going to get zapped forever. But I had no sense of a spiritual strength or experience from that early religious training. There's a little story. None of my stories are little. They're all long stories. There's a story I like about in India where they round up the wild elephants. And what they do is sort out those that are teachable from those that aren't. And the teachable elephants are young. And what they do is put a chain around their right front leg, and they put the other chain around a big tree that's in the middle of a clearing. Now, the baby elephant's used to going its way and used to being free. And so when it hits the end of the chain, it's a very frustrating and frightening experience for it, and it fights that chain. It'll run across the clearing until it hits the end of the chain. It gets dumped, and it trumpets and tears come. It's a sad story. Tears come down its face. And ultimately, the baby elephant learns that as soon as the chain gets tight, it can't go any further than that. It has to stop when the chain gets tight. And when the trainers see that the elephant has learned that, then for the rest of its life, when it's 20 years old and weighs 6 tons and could pull a locomotive, they put a little stake in the ground about so far with the chain around it and a chain around the elephant's foot, just deep enough on that stake so that the chain will get tight. And as soon as the elephant hits the end of the chain, it knows it can't go any further than that, because it learned that limiting belief when it was a baby elephant. Now, I come to Alcoholics Anonymous with a ton of baby elephant beliefs. A whole world of definitions of things the way they were and where I fit in it and what I could and couldn't do. And I just didn't learn that when I was a baby elephant. That's always the way I learned things. And most of the things I've learned have dawned on me in retrospect. Most of the things that I can share with you tonight, when they were going on, I didn't know what was going on. I just knew afterwards, and it dawned on me that that was what happened. Anyway, I had a lot of conflict in my life, I think, and when I was 13 years old, I had enough to drink that I got drunk for the first time. And I don't know, maybe I had a half a pint, I don't know, but whenever I had enough, that I felt good, all the conflict was resolved. I knew what people meant when they said that they'd have a few drinks and get to feeling good. And I did feel good, and I felt good right up until I threw up. After that, I didn't feel so hot, But anyway, the first time I got drunk, I was 13 years old, and the second time I got drunk, I was 13 years old. And the third and the fourth times I got drunk, I was 13 years old. And I would have gotten drunk more than that when I was 13, but I turned 14. And drank a lot when I was 14. And it never occurred to me until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, that if you're a teenager and you're getting drunk a lot, you have a drinking problem. There are no teenage social drunks. Drinking was always a problem, but it was also always a solution. As I got older, I discovered that there were things that I could do better if I had a few drinks. And it probably worked good twice in my life, but God, it worked great then. And I always kind of expected it to happen again. I had gone through the Navy and had had my share of trouble there. Spent a night in the Dodge City, Kansas jail, a weekend in the Sharon Springs, Kansas jail, 11 days in the Hutchinson Naval Air Station brig. And that was when I was drinking and having fun. Later on, I was drinking to function. I was working for a local aerospace firm, and they sent me to school for 2 weeks to learn an advanced statistical methods at UCLA, and it was just too tough for me. I couldn't learn anything, and I was taking notes, and I was really trying, but I wasn't getting it. And the whole idea of sending me to that school was that when I came back to work here, they had a special assignment that they wanted me to write a report on how to use a particular statistical technique. And I'm telling you, I drew a blank all the way through that thing. And when I got back to San Diego and I got that assignment, I had some Dexedrine, and I took a couple of those and about a half a pint of Jim Beam, and whatever it was that blocked me from not knowing about statistical methods went away. And it was magic, I wrote that report, and it was good, and it was right, and it was clear to me that booze made me smarter. You know? It never occurred to me that I had actually learned something at that school, and that I had relaxed enough that I could express myself after I had some drinks. It was just my experience that booze made me smarter. That was one time. Never made me smarter again. But I always tried, you know. I always had some problems with my drinking. Now, when I was in the 7th grade, I met this red-headed girl named Pat, and she and I and 19 other kids went through junior high and high school together. And I fell in love with her when we were in the 7th grade. And we got married when we were 20 years old. And we were married 19 years when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And she needed Al-Anon when we were in the 7th grade. She never heard of Al-Anon until I came to AA. So she was always a drinking problem. Always. She would say, you know, I must have said 1,000 times, don't you think you've had enough? Not once did I ever think I had enough. If I could still think at all, it was that I wanted another drink, you know, just one more. I left San Diego and went up to Culver City to work for Hughes Helicopters, and I left there, I believe, I left here just in time, before I got in a lot of trouble there, and then I got in trouble up there. I didn't come back from lunch. No, I came back from lunch, and I was drunk. I had come back from lunch a lot of times when I'd had too much to drink, but this time I was nearly slack-jawed. And I was in supervision then. And I went over and sat at my desk, and I smiled, and the people that worked for me, they walked by, and they all smiled. My boss walked by, and he didn't smile. And the next week, at the end of a meeting that was late in the late afternoon, we were all getting ready to leave, and he kept me a little while, and he told me about a guy named Mac, who had been a department manager at the company, and Mac had came back from lunch drunk, and they had demoted him. Now, he didn't say anything to me about me coming back. He just told me Mac's story. He said he didn't have any business being back in here that drunk. He said it's ruined his career here. Well, I didn't just get off some turnip truck. I knew that he was telling me about last Friday. So the next time I got too drunk at lunch, I didn't come back. And then the next time, I didn't come back. And then he told me a story about a guy that had worked for him who wasn't coming back from lunch. And he said, we fired him. And, gosh, I was, you know, I knew I was going to have to do better. I didn't want to quit drinking altogether, but I knew that I was going to have to stop drinking so much. I just never got the hang of that, not drinking so much. And all this time, I knew that I wasn't an alcoholic. If you had asked me if I was an alcoholic, I would have said, no, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't drink in the morning. When I was a baby elephant, I heard that alcoholics are people that drink in the morning. Now, I never examined that. You know, that isn't really a very comprehensive definition, but that struck me as being doctrine. You know, that's the truth. Alcoholics are people that drink in the morning. And I knew that right up till the morning I had my first drink. Then, after I had my first drink, I knew that drinking in the morning didn't have a damn thing to do with alcoholism. I had no idea why alcoholics drank in the morning. I drank in the morning because it got rid of my hangovers. And I drank in the morning from then on out. It didn't make it, you know, what the heck difference does it make what time of the day it is, whether you're going to drink or not? Whoever came up with those rules? You know, if it's a big deal with you, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon someplace. Now, I never thought of these, right? You know, these came to me automatically. The rationalizations came to me automatically. Some people talk about drinking socially for a period of time and then crossing an invisible line into alcoholism. I never crossed no line. I moved that line up. New line. Completely new perspective on alcoholism. And if I ever get that bad, if I ever get where I'm like that guy, why don't he go to AA and get his life squared away? Jesus, how can a guy be that way? Up until I got to the line. And then that didn't look as bad as it had. I don't know what was the matter with me to make, you know, but further on down I could see that that was bad. If a guy couldn't control his body functions, he was certainly an alcoholic. We had guys that come into the Tattletale that couldn't, well, I don't know whether they could or not, they didn't control their body function. They got 86th. Yeah. The night came one time when I went home and went to bed, and I needed to get up, and I got up, but I didn't wake up. And I didn't go to the bathroom, I went to the clothes closet. Now, Pat didn't think that was funny. At that time, we slept in a double bed. Sometime later, I got up and I didn't wake up, and I went to the washing machine. She didn't think that was funny either. And obviously, the night came when I didn't get up. And wetting the bed was the least offensive thing I did in bed. I'll tell you, she released me that night. Now, at that time, my thinking was very clear on this. I was embarrassed by it, and I wasn't exactly sure what had caused it, but I believed it was that I had to work so hard in this jungle of a world in order to make a living that when I finally got to sleep, I was just too tired to wake up. Fatigue was my problem, you know. Whenever I thought about my life's problems, sometimes, you know, I'd know that it was because I drank too much. But on the other hand, I knew that I had to drink something because it did something special for me. And, I had quit drinking forever, lots of times. The longest it ever lasted was 3 months. And I went by the Tattletale on April the 1st, actually. I had quit drinking on New Year's Eve, forever. And I went by the Tattletale on April the 1st to show them how I had quit drinking forever. And I ordered a Virgin Mary. And I said rather loudly, "There's nothing in this but tomato juice." And I drank it. And I ordered another one, and I said somewhat less loudly, "Put a shot of vodka in that one." And I got started on that one, and before I'd half finished that, I ordered a double shot of Old Crow, and I didn't drink that like an alcoholic would. I just sipped it, unless, of course, I gulped it. But I'll tell you, all of the anger, everything went away. And I promised myself that time that I would never give this up again. It does too much for me. And I closed the bar up that night and went home to square her away once and for all. My boss was going to have to fire me. They had a excuse me. They had a meeting to fire me and didn't. I'll be back in a minute. My wife went to an attorney to see about getting a divorce, and he told her that he didn't think that she really wanted to divorce me. But he told her that it sounded to him like I was an alcoholic. And why don't she get me to go to Alcoholics Anonymous? And she suggested that to me after I'd had about a half a pint. And I said, sounds like a good idea to me, if I get in trouble. And so I drank some more. I ended up hopelessly in debt. Excuse me. I had a Bank of America card. I had some other things, but particularly the Bank of America card. With that, I invented creative financing before the real estate people even dreamed of it. I would take my friends from the Tattletale out to the marina, to Charlie Brown's and the Hungry Tiger, and I'd buy them the tall martinis and steaks, and I'd put it on the Bank of America card. During the month, when I didn't have $1.65 to buy a half a pint of Old Crow, I'd buy a quart and I'd put it on the Bank of America card. You can't charge a half a pint, for God's sake, to the Bank of America. And at the end of the month, I would go to 2 different Banks of America, because back in that day, they didn't have real-time access into the status of your account. And if the date on your card was good, they would loan you $50 across the counter. I always borrowed $45, just to be safe. Then I'd go to another Bank of America, and I'd borrow another $45. Then I'd go to the post office, and I'd buy a money order to send in a payment on the Bank of America card. Yeah. I never missed a payment. Those guys were lucky, Made every payment. But pretty soon I'm double the limit. And they're sending me letters telling me that cut up that damn card. And so I went to the credit union at work, and I had a small loan with them, and I enlarged that so that we had to make payments out into infinity on that. And I paid the Bank of America card back lower than the limit. And God, that was a relief. That was such a relief that within 3 months I had it double the limit again. Each time I did that was going to be the last time, everything, and so then it was all right. I was just in a lot of trouble, and I had an opportunity to sell some equipment that I didn't own. Equipment that I found right before the owner lost it. And I got that money, and I was going to pay the Bank of America, and what I did was I go by the Tattletale, and I paid my tab there, and I closed the Tattletale up that night, and I opened it up the next Saturday morning, and then I closed it up that night, and I opened it up Sunday morning. By then, I was out of money, and I was back into the tab as more than I had been before I paid it off Friday. And I was lining up some more equipment sales. And when I came to the next morning, I knew that I had to stop drinking. I did not know that I was an alcoholic, and I have no clear idea tonight really why I called this guy that I knew was in AA. And he was the general supervisor at the plant that I worked at. And I believed that he was the president of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I called, and I had drank a plenty that day. I called and asked him if he'd take me to a meeting, and he said he would. When I got into his truck that night to go to the meeting, the first thing I told him was that I wasn't really an alcoholic. He said he didn't know if I was or not, but he thought we were going to the right place. I said, well, don't tell anybody that knows me that you're taking me to an AA meeting. He said, everybody that I know that knows you knows that your whole life is messed up because of your drinking. And I want to do everything I can to keep it from them that you might be thinking about getting your act together. I said, I understand, but don't tell them anyway. He took me to my home group, the Culver City Studio Group. It's the group that I love the most. I was warmly welcomed there. I was warmly welcomed as I had never been before in my life. And I was telling each of those people that I wasn't an alcoholic. And, it's surprising how many of them thought that I was in the right place anyway. One guy told me that he didn't know when he came to AA whether he was an alcoholic or not, and that he had came really just to get his act together and get everybody off his back. And then after that happened, he got his wife back and they got a home. He went back out and drank again and lost it all. And he said, I'll tell you this, when I did that, the one place that I was always welcomed at was this meeting. I was always welcome in Alcoholics Anonymous. And he said, I want you to know that you will always be welcome here. Whether you're here or not, your place will be here in Alcoholics Anonymous. Nobody can ever take anybody's place here. And he told me to go have a seat and hoped I liked the meeting. And I know when I did sit down that I had a feeling of hope. I didn't know it then, but I know now that the feeling I had was maybe I am in the right place. For the first time in my life, maybe I am in the right place. And then they read chapter 5. And I knew that I wasn't in the right place. When they said, there is one who has all power, that one is God, may you find him now, I was discouraged. They kept reading, and I got more discouraged. And then they talked about making a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understood him. And there was more stuff about God and prayer and meditation. And by then I was absolutely in the pits. Then they read, do not be discouraged. I was already discouraged. Another thing at my home group, meets twice a week. The first meeting is a beginners and discussion meeting, and if somebody shows up drinking, the subject that night is going to be what is alcoholism and how do you stop drinking. And that was the subject that night. And they described alcoholism the way it's described in the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, that it is a disease, that it is a disease of a progressive nature, that over any considerable period of time it always gets worse, it never gets better. That alcoholics are simply men and women who have lost the ability to control their drinking. And that alcoholism is characterized by an obsession of the mind that somehow, some way, this time, I'll control and enjoy my drinking. Somehow, this time, it's going to be different. And that coupled with that obsession of the mind is a physical reaction that alcoholics have to alcohol that manifests itself in the phenomenon of craving for more once they start. And they talked about their drinking and thinking that way, and I identified with it. And I knew that I would get up early in the morning, and I would be hungover. I would be ashamed. I'd be afraid that I was going to lose my family. I would be afraid that I was going to lose my job. I just couldn't go in. And I'd be sick to my stomach. I'd have a headache. I wouldn't be able to look up without bending my knees. And I'd go to the quick stop liquor store, and I'd get a half a pint. And I'd know that today I'm just going to drink enough of this to get my heart started. That by gosh, if I got drunk today, I was going to, I wasn't sure. I hadn't lost my job anyway. And today I'm not going to get drunk. I'm just going to drink. I'm going to baby this half a pint through the day. Not once did the half a pint make it through the day. And when the half a pint was gone, I wouldn't have been fired. I would be feeling good. I would be functioning effectively. And I'd have my life's problems and my drinking problem in better perspective. And it was clear to me that I'd have to get back to work on time after lunch, but it would be all right to go to the Tattletale for lunch. Now, they don't serve food in the Tattletale. I would have just enough time for 3 doubles, which I would drink, and then it wouldn't be so important that I get back exactly on time, but that I could be a little late. And if I went back, I would get another half a pint, and I'd baby it. And then on the way home, I'd get another half a pint, and or I'd stop in the Tattletale and have some more. And it was all right to keep drinking just so I didn't get drunk, up until I got drunk, and then it was to hell with you. I'll drink, by God, if I want to. I'd go home, Pat, and I'd get right into the main event. The preliminary events had stopped years ago, and I'd end up passing out or fighting. Always we fought. And I'd wake up the next morning and I'd have a hell of a hangover, and I'd be remorseful because I'd gotten so much trouble yesterday. And I'd be sick to my stomach and my head would ache. And I'd go by the Quick Stop liquor store, and by God, today, I'm just going to drink enough to get my heart started. And I'm going to baby this half a pint through the day. I was obsessed with that idea. I was obsessed with the idea that this time it's going to be different. And I wasn't even aware of that. I just know that that was always my intention. And in the book it talks about, sometimes I give page numbers, sometimes I don't in the book. If I give page numbers, I just make them up. But you guys don't ever check me. I've heard guys say he's not much of a speaker, but he sure knows the book, don't he? The book, in the doctor's opinion, talks about the phenomenon of craving that sets up with the alcoholics once they start to drink. And I told my first sponsor, Kenny, that the guy that took me to my first meeting, that I said, I don't ever remember a phenomenon of craving. And he said, you probably wouldn't. He said, you only experience that if when you once start to drink, you really try to stop. If you keep slugging them down, you never get to experience that phenomenon of craving. And then after he told me that, it dawned on me that when I drank at the bar, I always ordered doubles. And when one was about half gone, I'd order another one. And I never thought much about that, but you guys know I didn't want to get caught short. Now, sometime if my timing was off, and I killed this one before he brought me my next one, I know that feeling of low-grade alert that sets in, where in the hell is my drink, is the beginning of the phenomenon of craving. I just didn't let that run away with itself. Anyway, I learned 2 things that first night at my AA meeting: that I was an alcoholic, and that Alcoholics Anonymous couldn't help me. That there was too much about God, and I had no idea that this was a religious outfit. And I told Kenny that I said, I called you because my life was unmanageable. They had talked about the first step that night. And I said, that's why I called you. And I said, I believe if what you guys described as alcoholism, that I'm an alcoholic. But AA can't help me. I said, if you can kid yourself, if you can psych yourself up into believing that God is doing things for you, then in that fantasy world it will work for you. But I said, I'm too intelligent for that. Besides that, I have to live in the real world. My real world consisted of a pocket full of whites and a bunch of half a pints every day, you know. That doesn't help you with your body functions much either. But he told me that he wasn't as interested in what I thought about God or what I knew about God, nor was he interested in whether or not I thought AA would work, as he was whether I really admitted that I was powerless over alcohol and that my life was unmanageable. Because he said, if you have really admitted that, then you're already in. That's the first step, and you're already in, so don't worry about that. Just don't drink. Don't care if somebody holds a gun to your head. Don't take the next drink. And go to meetings and listen with an open mind. Listen like someone would who wants to learn some new ideas. He said, all of your ideas, and he said, I'm sure you had some great ideas, have gotten you right where you are. And if you lock into that being the truth about how to live your life, then you're stuck with that. They said, nobody will ever tell you in AA what you're supposed to believe about God. But we will tell you to stop drinking and knock off the bennies and go to meetings and listen with an open mind. And that once in a while, he said, most of the stuff you hear won't help you, won't sound good to you. But once in a while, somebody will describe a problem that you'll identify with. And then they'll describe a solution that will make sense to you. Then you have to be willing to try that. That this isn't an intellectual exercise that we go through here where you learn new philosophical concepts and are thereby elevated in your life. This is a living experience. It's where you learn things by experiencing them. Try the new ideas in your life. He said, try it for 30 days, and if you're not happy, we'll be glad to refund your misery. And that's not true. Nobody's ever glad to see anybody have drinking problems again, but and I didn't have any high hopes that this was going to work for me, but I stopped drinking and I stopped taking the bennies. I was miserable at work. You know, I was immobilized. I just couldn't cut it. I couldn't assert myself. I tried to dazzle them with my footwork, and my feet were nailed to the floor. You know? It was hell at work. And I went home, and I'll tell you this, Pat was sick to death of me. She was sick of me and all of my answers about how good our life was going to be. And it wasn't any fun at home. And I'd show up at an AA meeting, and you guys would put me back together, and I didn't even know that that was what was happening. I didn't know that this was the only safe place to be in my life. I just know that whenever I was on my way to a meeting, I never had any idea it was going to be helpful. If you'd asked me, I would have known it wasn't going to be helpful. But my experience was, you put me back together. And when I left the meeting, the feeling I had was that you guys' lives were squared away and that maybe someday mine would be. And then I would start thinking, you know, about, and I'd invalidate that the program would work for me. You know, intellectually, I'd invalidate it because of all that stuff about God. But I got some laughs. I had never laughed uncontrollably in my life until I came here and heard some of you guys talk. And I would get started laughing, and I couldn't stop. I heard Flo D in my first 30 days. She lived in Whittier, California, and she was a colorful, spiritually beautiful lady who said that she came to Alcoholics Anonymous in her metallic age. She said she had silver in her hair, gold in her teeth, and lead in her ass. She said her love affair with alcohol was like the love affair a tomcat has with a female skunk. She never got all she wanted, she just got all she could stand. And she said that she had learned that when she had trouble in her life, that her trouble went away when she tried to help someone else. And so she lived that in her life. And when she had a problem, she redoubled her efforts to help someone. And she worked a lot helping people on Skid Row. And it was really working for her. And then one night she tripped and fell and broke her elbow. Then a few days later, her sister fell and slipped and fell and broke her elbow. And then Flo got the shingles, very painful. And she said at 3 o'clock one morning she was sitting on the foot of her bed in a lot of pain, and she just shook her fist in God's face and said, "Why me?" She said a voice came to my ear and said, "Because there's something about you that pisses me off." I know that Flo never heard that, but that helped me, you know. You got to be sick for that to help you, but it helped me a lot. I heard Ski in my first 90 days of sobriety. I think Ski lives in San Diego again, but Ski said he was 36 years and learning that all the people that he hated didn't feel it. And it was killing him. And that was a revelation to me. It had never dawned on me that they didn't feel it. I was giving it to them with both barrels. They deserved it. And I heard that, and I tried to stop hating people. I heard Tommy O. Mora say that if you make one mistake and brood about that, then you've made two mistakes. And the brooding is the worst consequence of any mistake that you make. It's of longer duration and greater intensity than any other consequence of the mistake. And that made sense to me, and I have worked since I heard that night to not brood about the mistakes. Try not to make the same mistake every time, but don't brood about it. The brooding makes it worse. I heard Archie J. say that success may be getting what you want, but happiness is wanting what you're getting. And that represented a whole new idea, a whole new attitude about my life. Archie said that we endeavor in AA to learn to live our lives in the now. And right now, whatever's happening to you, love that. Because that's what's happening anyway. And the biggest problem that you have is not accepting what the hell's going on and saying you want to live in reality. I had been an engineer, and it was always important for me to understand, to analyze, and see how things worked. And if things were working wrong, find out what went wrong and then fix that. Now, that's not a bad technique for engineering. Don't work in your life, but I thought it did. And I heard Clancy say tell that analogy about being on the Titanic when it hit the iceberg, and having an intellectual curiosity about why the ship's sinking, and even investigating it and finding out. Maybe the only one that knows as it goes down. Now, you may know why. I just, that was a whole new idea that I didn't have to find out why. I just had to get off the damn boat. Alcoholism was killing me, then stop drinking. Go to meetings. I had a lot of fun in AA, and it was changing my life, but when I thought about it, I knew it wouldn't work. I had heard Murphy's Law when I was in the Tattletale. Murphy's Law, I was really drunk when I heard it, and it nearly sobered me up, The truth always had a major impact on me. Murphy's Law is basically nothing is as easy as it looks. If something can go wrong, it will go wrong, and at the worst possible time. Boy, that was right. That was an axiom. Basic truth about life. Let's say Thursday, nothing bad would happen on Thursday, but I wouldn't experience nothing bad happening. I would experience something bad is going to happen. And with that attitude, that's the life I would live Thursday. Friday, nothing bad would happen again. But I wouldn't experience that because I'd know for sure something bad's going to happen. Let's say Saturday morning, something bad happened. I'd say, see there? See there? My life's always going to be messed up. There's another law. It's called the law of probable dispersal. It states that whatever hits the fan will never be evenly distributed. It's also known as the why does that all land on me law. You know? And this Saturday morning it all showered down on me, and I knew once more that AA wasn't going to work for me. And I decided to not go to the meeting. Not going to go to any more meetings and shake hands and grin like a baboon and say how great everything is when everything isn't great and it isn't going to be great. And a guy came by and picked me up and took me to the Malibu meeting because I didn't have enough character to tell him that I'd quit going to the meeting. I know on the way to the meeting, I'm sure we enjoyed ourselves and I forgot about going to quit AA. And when I got to the Malibu meeting, I was warmly welcomed, as I always am in AA, and I felt good. And Don G. was the speaker that night, and among many other things that he said, if you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous and you haven't worked the steps, AA will stop being fun. And you'll decide it's not going to work for you. And you'll decide to stop going to the meetings. Then you'll decide to go to the bar and have a drink. And when you do that, and the bartender says, "What's the matter? I thought you was going to AA. Don't AA work?" He said, if you haven't worked the steps, be honest with him and tell him you don't know if AA would work or not because you didn't try. And there was too much truth in that. That actually thrilled me to hear him say that. And I knew it was the truth about me. I knew that I had not worked the steps. I had just intellectually invalidated doing that. And on the way home from that meeting that night, I made a decision that I was never going to believe, never going to purposely believe that AA wouldn't work for me until I'd worked the steps to the best of my ability, ever how that was. I know in retrospect that night on the way home I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity because it was happening to me. A little while later I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him, and I understood he wasn't going to change anything. Wasn't going to make a bit of difference in my life making that decision. Too much truth in that. That actually thrilled me to hear him say that, and I knew it was the truth about me. I knew that I had not worked the steps. I had just intellectually invalidated doing that. And on the way home from that meeting that night, I made a decision that I was never going to believe, never going to purposely believe that AA wouldn't work for me until I'd worked the steps to the best of my ability, ever how that was. I know in retrospect that night on the way home I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity because it was happening to me. A little while later I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him, and I understood he wasn't going to change anything. Wasn't going to make a bit of difference in my life making that decision, except I felt better. You know? And I didn't feel better all the time. I would have anxiety attacks at work. I would be immobilized with anxiety. And I called a friend of mine named Frank Giroux, who passed away several years ago. He was a great friend for me. And Frank could always talk me out of problems. When I'd tell him I had a problem, he'd always show me how it wasn't a problem. And this day I told him what the problem was, and he said, "It sounds like a real problem to me." I didn't want to hear that. He said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll say the serenity prayer with you." I said, "What do you want to do that for?" And he told me why. He said, if you're going to live up to life's responsibilities, one of the things that you have to have in order to do that is spiritual strength. You can't do it without some spiritual strength. So if you're going to live up to your responsibilities, I'll say the serenity prayer with you. We said the serenity prayer over the phone, and I listened. And that sounded like a terrific answer. You know, I must have heard the serenity prayer a lot of times without listening. But this time I listened. I don't know that God listens. I don't think God has ears. But I do. And I heard that. And by the time we had said that prayer, the anxiety attack was gone. The problem was still there. I knew it was still there, but I felt better. I don't think I've had an immobilizing anxiety attack since then. And I told Frank, still got the problem, I feel better, and we laughed and I thanked him. And it dawned on me that that prayer had really worked, and I believed it worked because I listened. I read the book again, and I found the third step prayer in the book. And George C., who's here tonight, who's my second sponsor, and he and I got together and we said the third step prayer together. And I felt good about that. And I always had to understand. Things had to make sense to me before I could do them. And I knew something about my life's problems. In 1972, the nation's economy was in a recession. Now, my taking an inventory, I don't see how that's going to help the nation's economy. My wife is still treating me pretty shabby. How is my taking an inventory going to help her? For her to see what a nice guy I'm becoming. And some of the people who I had tried to cut their throats when I was drinking, they hadn't fallen back in love with me. And how could my take an inventory really address those problems? But I took the inventory because I had made a commitment to working the steps. And I know I took a fearless and thorough moral inventory. And I know that when I'm 40 years old and I read this inventory, I see that if I'm still angry and still hateful because my dad beat me from as early as I can remember until I was 17 and could get the hell away from me, then I never once pleased him. If I'm still upset about that, I've blown that way the hell out of proportion. That's not what's going on in my life. My dad had been dead for 20 years. The only reason he was my problem is because I wanted him to be my problem. I sure as hell didn't want to be my problem. I'd have to change if I could have ever. When I was drinking, all I was capable of seeing is that this time it's going to be different. All I was really capable of seeing was that I have to have something to drink, and I think it's an inspiration, a divine inspiration, a stroke of genius or something, that they put a step in the program when I'm sober that makes me look at my problems, that I see where my problems are, so that I can see who really has to change. I can see who's been a thoroughly inconsiderate, thoughtless husband and father. Somehow seeing that, taking a fifth step, put a lot of that stuff in my past. Put the past in my past. After George and I did the my fifth step together, he left and I got the book down and I read at the bottom of page 75 and the top of page 76. To go back through the first 5 steps and see if I'd left, I think it says sand out of the cement, that I'm building an archway through which I can walk a free man, or words to that effect, and to become willing to have God remove those defects of character. Heck, I was always, every problem I ever got into in my life, I was willing. I was willing to drink when I started drinking. Then I ended up, I couldn't stop. I was willing to lie when I started lying. I was willing to steal when I started to steal. Everything I did, I was willing to do when I started. And I think it's wonderful that they put steps in our program that give us an opportunity, force us really to be willing to be different. And I said the 7-step prayer. I didn't feel any spiritual uplift, but the next Wednesday, I was going to an AA meeting, and my wife said, "Are you going to a meeting again tonight?" I said, "Of course I'm going tonight." And she said, "Well, the kids and I are glad that you're sober. But you aren't here any more than you used to be. And there's a lot of things that we need you to do." And I said, "What do you mean?" And I ticked off 4 or 5 things that I had done, and I presented them as if they were samples from a much longer list. And she got mad. And she said, "You haven't really changed. You're just like you were when you asked me if you could quit work and if I would go to work and put you through college. And instead of your going to class, you went to the Silver Dollar Bar and you drank beer until they gave you a mug with your name on it." Which she said was my biggest achievement that year. Now, I'll tell you, any other time in my life she would have started that, I would have wanted to have taken her head off. This time, without even knowing what was going on, my unplanned response was I understood where she was coming from. And I said, you know, Pat, you're right. I'm not getting good enough fast enough. I'll never be able to make up for all that stuff. I hope someday you can forget it and forgive it. But I don't want to fight with you about it, and I'm not going to try to defend it. If you want to talk about it some more, I'll talk to you when I get back from the meeting. And I went on to the meeting, but there's no way, you know, I know that there was no way I could have responded that way, and it's changed our lives. You know, and I believe that happened to me because of this program and because of working the steps. And working the steps didn't seem all that inspirational to me at the time. It was just that my life got better. I tell a short story. None of mine are short. Later on in my sobriety, Pat was complaining. You see, I used to holler at her, and if she said anything bad about me, I would show her a clothes closet that needed cleaned up, or under the kitchen sink. I'd find some place where I'd say, you clean up this pig pen, and then you come and talk to me. You know, you get your act together, and you come and talk to me. You know, I used to wonder why she stayed with me through that. I know now. When the neighbor women come over and said, poor Pat, how do you put up with that? That's why she stayed. She loved it. She loved it. But after I got sober, I stopped being that way. I really did. And I was a sweetheart. And she was telling me, yes, I was. And she said, she kept complaining that I was controlling her worse than I ever had. And I didn't. That wasn't true. You know, Jesus, how come she's saying that? I got invited to go up to Fresno to speak, and she had been to Fresno before, and she didn't want to go to Fresno. But she was going to go to Fresno because I always talked her into everything. And the last week before we went, I said, we're going to Fresno Friday, and she said, no, I'm not going to Fresno. And I started explaining to her how we weren't going to do anything bad. This was a good thing to do. We'll have fun in Fresno. And I just about had her talked into it. And I knew that, because I always knew. And she said, you know, Howard, I just about gave in. And she said, you know, when you come home sometimes and I'm crying and you say, what's wrong? And I say, I don't know. She said, I know what's wrong. She said, you've talked me into doing something. And what we did wasn't bad, but I knuckled under and I don't feel good about myself when I do that. And when you come home and I'm mad and you say, what's wrong? And I say, nothing. She said, that's what's wrong. I've knuckled in and I don't feel good about myself and I'm mad at you because you talked me into it again. But I want you to understand that I love you and we're going to stick it out together. And I love you enough that if it causes you pain for me not to go to Fresno with you, I love you enough to help you go through that pain. My God! I was not ready for that. Now, she stuck to that. You know? She not only didn't go to Fresno, if she didn't want to go to the drugstore with me, she wouldn't go. And I took it personal, you know, that I could not, I'll tell you, you know, you get the idea who's controlling her when they don't let you control them anymore. I really went, and I ended up taking another inventory of just about her and I. And some of the things that came to me was when she went to Al-Anon, I encouraged her. I said, that's wonderful. You know, it's a 12-step program and it'll work. And I believe that Bill Wilson helped start Al-Anon. And I think he did it because you guys were getting too active in AA and he wanted to have you have your own meeting. Now, I just said that once, you know. When she went to another 12-step program, I told her again, that's a great thing, and it'll work for you. The 12 steps will work. But I'll tell you this, Pat, if everybody in AA was as drunk as it looks to me like everybody in OA is fat, I wouldn't even go to AA. You know, each thing that she got into, I would invalidate. Just cut her legs out from under her. And I didn't know I was doing that. If you'd have asked me, I was being a sweetheart. Well, it looked to me. Her loving me enough to help me go through pain really strengthened our relationship. I did not, it changed our life. And I know that they taught her that in those damned Al-Anon meetings. She didn't learn that on her own. My first sponsor tracked down the equipment that I'd stolen and called and told me who had the equipment, what it would cost me to get it. And he said it may be my last chance to get it. And if I didn't get it, I may regret it all my life and I may not stay sober. Except for that, he didn't put any pressure on me at all. Now, I knew when I went to the bank to borrow the money that this was a stupid thing to do. I knew that the company I stole it from would write that off. I knew that the guy that was responsible for the equipment, that they knew he hadn't stole it, and he wasn't in any trouble. I knew they could never trace it to me. So I wasn't in any trouble. And now I knew that this machine shop had it still in productive use so that society wasn't being deprived of its value either. Now, why would I want to do something stupid, like open a can of worms, and jeopardize myself to those problems? I knew it was dumb all the way to the bank to borrow the money, and I knew it was dumb all the way to the machine shop where the guy let me have the equipment. And I knew it was dumb when I took it back to the guy that was responsible for it and gave it to him and told him that I had stolen it and I was bringing it back, and I was sorry I stole it. And I didn't mention Alcoholics Anonymous. I just brought the stuff back. And the next day I felt wonderful. I did not know how heavy that had weighed on me until it wasn't weighing on me anymore. And I know that that same thing is true with each amend that I have made. When I'm doing it, I know that this time it isn't going to work. This time it really isn't necessary. And each time I feel better. When I first came to AA, I heard that if you work the steps, they surrender you. And I didn't know what they were talking about when they said that. I heard we surrender to win. Now, I knew that was wrong. I knew that. If you surrender, you're a quitter. You've given up. And quitters never win. But if it made you guys feel better to believe that, it was okay with me. Not too long ago, I heard Father Terry say that he couldn't define surrender, but he knows when it's happened to him that it isn't the thing to do at the time. And I liked that, and I didn't know why I liked it until it dawned on me that nearly every time I've worked the steps, it didn't seem to me like the thing to do at the time. Yet the results of having worked the steps made me a winner, set me free. I had never been a winner before in my life, could never have been a winner, except for coming to Alcoholics Anonymous and stopping drinking and finding this program and these steps. Didn't seem to me like the thing to do at the time. Now I know what they mean when they say you work the steps and they surrender you, and what they mean when they say we surrender to win, because that's happened in my life. I pray and meditate each morning. It dawned on me someplace along the line it was never necessary that God change anything in order to accommodate me and my problem. What needed to be changed was me. I suppose I'd always somehow wanted to change, but never had any way to change. Never had anything that worked for me to change. And the steps worked, and the steps have changed me. God didn't have to change anything for my life to change and for me to change. The principles that are embodied in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous are as certain as the principles of mathematics and physics and chemistry. God don't have to change anything for those things to work. I have to apply them in my life. And I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous what love is. I read that love is not standing apart gazing at each other. Love is standing together, looking outward towards mutual objectives. And when I read that, I know that that's what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's really what we do here. We don't just talk about that, we live that way. That's living love. We stand together, we have a mutual objective of a happy, comfortable life for each other, all together. so that we can share that experience. And we'll go to any length to help each other do that. And we don't just talk about it, we do it in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's the greatest expression of love that I have experienced in my life. Meditation is important to me. And meditation is important because it's a quiet time where in the book on the bottom of page 48 and the top of page 49, it talks about the prosaic steel girders that are made up of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speeds. And then it says when the perfectly logical assumption is presented to us that underlying all the material world and life as we know it, there's an all-powerful, guiding, creative intelligence right there. Our perverse streak sets in, and we set about laboriously to invalidate that. I read that a lot of times, and I could see where people I sponsor actually do that. And one day it dawned on me that that's what I do. And I made a commitment then that I'm going to do everything I can to believe the perfectly logical assumption that underlying all the material world and life as I know it, there is an all-powerful, guiding, creative intelligence. I don't want to invalidate that. And when I meditate in the morning, I know it. I spend 30 minutes knowing that. And it's the best 30 minutes of my day. And it says to be patient, tolerant, kindly, and love. Ask God in the morning meditation. It says that on the top of page 83. Those are perfect answers. Patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love are perfect answers to whatever problems that we're experiencing in our lives. I know that impatience, intolerance, unkindliness, and unlovingness is not the answer. I tried that all my life, and it didn't work. These are not phony answers. These are real answers. There is no psyching myself up into a fantasy. I'm psyching myself up into reality. And it really works. In a book on meditation, I read that whatever way you find God, that is the right way. If you feel God out, that's right for you. Or if you think God out, that's right for you. Or whatever combination. But to remember, wherever you see God pass, mark that spot and go sit in that window again. The moment I read that, I knew that this program, these meetings, you people, this is where I have seen God pass. I have marked that. This is my window. I come here and I see God pass, and you come here and you see God pass. And there's a lot of times we may not know that that's what's happening. But right now I know that that's always what's happening in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's God passing. Thank you very much for letting me share.